So in this project, you will be learning to develop a simple calculator. You will create the user interface of it as seen here, and you will be doing the event handling part and the API discussions, and we'll be doing it in a very practical manner. So this is the coding you will be learning in this project, the coding, and this will be the output. So in the output you will enter, you'll be able to enter the numbers, the user, and then the user will be able to click the plus, multiply, clear, and do the other buttons as well as exit. So we are doing this in a very practical manner. So let's see how to do it now.
Okay, looks good. Good. Yeah, awesome. Great, guys. Only thing now, I have the GUI, but events are not working, as you can see, right? So let's start with writing code for the exit button, right? So in order to write code for the exit button, if you look at this, as I said, you have from the API you have to find the relevant event handling interface, right, and override. So now I will help you for this, right? So the relevant interface for this is, because it's a button click, right? What you need is clicking the buttons. So for button clicks, the relevant interface is action listener. So I'm helping you, right? So you will learn this action listener. So what I have to do is I have to override the methods of action listener, right? That's how you do it, right? So you have to basically implement the action listener interface, because it's an interface, and then you have to override it. So if you can't remember the concepts of Java interfaces, look at our previous video on Java interfaces. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this action listener, and what I'm going to do is, give me a sec for me to check what I have to do. Give me a sec. Got this. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do something. Give me a second, because there are different ways of doing this. Now I'm thinking of the simplest way to show this to you, because if I implement, I'm doing a small calculation for me. So if I implement it here, then I can override, but that's not a static method, so I can't say this, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have another class actually, right? So multiple classes, if you don't know, if you can't understand multiple classes, look at our previous video on classes and objects, right? So I'm going to create a class called my GUI, right? Okay, my GUI, right? Just a class, or my calculator. I like that. How about that? My calculate. I like it, right? And this is my own class, and I'm going to write my own method. Say public void, say create GUI, right? Okay, I'm going to say create GUI, right? And what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to move this from here to down, because I'm going to make it simple. Otherwise, because when the GUI creation is inside a static method, you will have to deal with bit of extra things. So I don't want to deal with that now, to make it things complicated for you, right? So I moved it into my own class, and I said create GUI, right? So what I have to do now is just create an object of this, isn't it? This is basic concept. So you can say obj my calculator, right? Object of my calculator, right? So because this is simple, guys, this is simple. I just moved the stuff into a class, right? This should not be confusing. If it's confusing, you have to look at one of our previous videos on classes and objects, right? In this series. So once you create an object of my calculator, now you can call the create GUI method, right? So what you do now is you will call the method create GUI, but same thing happens. If I run this, you will see the same previous output, but I did it for a reason, right? The output is the same. Why did I do this? You will realize later, but let's focus on the continuing the lesson. So I said I have to implement action listener. So how you implement the interface is, in your class you will say implements, right? Implements, and say the keyword is implements, implements, right? So we have done this under a separate lesson called Java implements. You have to implement, as I said, the action listener, but the action listener is in a package. You have to import, otherwise you will get an error, right? Implements, implements, implements. You are getting error telling cannot find symbol. Can you see, guys? It says cannot. Why it says cannot find symbol is you have to import the package of action listener, otherwise it can't find it. That's why it says cannot find symbol. So you have to import java.aw.event, right? So you have to come here and say import jar.error event dot action listener, right? Action, not action event, it's action listener, right? because it's in that package. Now, the moment you do that, you don't get that error, but you get another error. What is this error? This says my calculator is not abstract and does not override abstract method action perform. So for this, you have to understand the concept of interfaces, right? So in an interface, if you implement an interface, you have to override the method. Otherwise, you are getting this error. So what's the method? The method is action performed, as you can see. So you have to override this action perform method, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and you will be taken into the method, right? So you just copy it, and so you have to override that method inside this class. That is the theory, right? Action listener. So you have to come here, override, right, like this, but make sure you put a public in front, because it's you need to access stuff. So public void action perform, action event cannot find symbol. Why can't find it? Because it's in a package. So you have to make sure, because you are referring to the API, you have to click action event and see what the package is, right? So you will see it's in again java.awt.event. So I have to import java.awt.event, but this time I have to get what's the class. What's the class? The error is in action event, cannot find symbol. So you have to import event.action event. Okay, guys, right? So you have to import. So cool, all good. What is this action performed? This action performed is what will trigger when you click on a button. So for example, when you click on a button, if you want to say, if I put output statement and say button clicked, I'm just giving example, right? If that is all what you want to say for a button click, that's it. That's all you have to do. Let's start with this, right? I just want to say button clicked. So if that is what I want to do when I click a button, just to print a message, I'm done. I'm done with that. So basically what I did now is I completed this bullet point, right? So I override the method related to the event, right? Event is click. Now next step is attach this code to the component. So meaning this code has to be attached to the component. So what is my component? So when I run this, I have labels, text boxes and buttons. So where do I want that button click to get attached? Obviously for the buttons, not for the labels or not for the text box. So the action performed, I want to attach the button clicked into the 6 buttons, 1 2 3 4 5 6, right? So that means for each button object I will have to call that method. What's that method? The method is add action listener, because I have done up to this. Now the final method is you have to call add action listener. So add action listener comes from say in this case comes from abstract button, because I'm referring to a button, right? So putting everything together, what you have to do is it's simple thing. For each button, what are your buttons? BTN add, BTN sub. So for each button you have to call that method. What's the method? You have to call add action listener, right? That's the theory. You have to call add action listener. So you will say add action listener, and for add action listener the parameter should be action listener. Now this is something very interesting, guys. This is something very interesting. So for add action listener, the parameter should be action listener, and add action listener comes from a button, right? So if you go to the API and if you look at the button class, right, in the button class, because I'm calling add action listener on the button object, so this method should be a method in the JButton class. If I search for this method, you can see this add action listener comes to JButton class. It's coming to JButton class from its parent class, the abstract button, right? Because abstract button, as you can see the inheritance hierarchy, abstract button is the parent of JButton. Look here. So you are getting that method inherited. You are getting that method inherited, right, from the abstract button into the JButton. So if I look at add action listener method, if I click on it, it needs a parameter called action listener. That is the theory. So that means if you call add action listener, you have to pass object. You have to pass object of action listener. What is action listener? You all saw a little while ago. It's a interface. Now if you know Java interfaces, you know that you can't create object of a interface. So then you got a question, how can you pass an object as a parameter of an interface, because you can't create object of an interface, right? You can't create. So what you do is, as you know, you can't create object of interface, but as you know, there's a child class always for interface. So in this case, the you want to pass action listener, right? But you got a child class, because your my calculator implements action listener. That means your my calculator is a child class. So instead of passing action listener object, you can't do it because it's interface. Instead of that, you can pass a my calculator object, because a my calculator is a action listener. So because you are implementing. So for add action listener, what you have to do is you have to pass an object of my calculator. You can't pass object of action listener. So when you say add action listener on a button, when you say add action listener on a button, you have to pass a interface action listener, but you can't do it because you can't create object of interface. What you can do is of action listener, you got a class, child class. So you can pass object of my calculator. Now that is what it does here with the keyword this. So to the add action listener, you want to pass a action listener. So your current class, where this line is in this what class? This line is in the mic. So that current class is a child of action listener. So if you can pass object of the current class, you are done, because your current class is a action listener. So what you have to do is you have to pass the keyword this. The keyword this refers to the current object. When you say this in Java, it means current object. So the current object refers to the current class. So what is the current class? The current class is my calculator, which is a child of action listener. So when you say this, you are referring to the my calculator instance running at the moment, right? Which is a child of action listener. So for the you not a problem, because you have to pass action listener. So what you can do is my calculator implements action listener, meaning my calculator is a action listener. So instead of passing action listener, you can pass a child. That is the theory in Java. So you pass my calculator, right? That means you say this, that's what happens. Simple as that, my friends. If you run this, you should see for each button click it will work. So if I just expand this and show it to you, when I click the plus button, see it's too small, but look here, focus here, it says button clicked. If I click on another button, right, hold on, if I click on another button, no, because why? I attach that only for the plus button. For none of the other buttons, it prints that message button clicked. So if I want that message to be printed for the other buttons, right, I will have to add the action listener for each button. So I will have to copy this, right? I'll have to copy this and add it for each button, right? So btn add, then btn subtract, btn multiply, btn divide, right? btn divide, then btn clear, then btn exit, right? So this way you are adding the so this means the current object. So what happens is it refers to the current object, meaning current class, implements action listener, and then it will automatically trigger the action perform. That's how it happens. It auto triggers the action performed, and for everything it will say button click. So if I run this now, and click each button, if you look down, see it says button click over here. Look at the mouse down. See it says button click, button click. So the button click is working. Only thing now I want to do different task. For this I want to exit, for this I want to add, for this I want to clear. But hope you understand up to that point, right? So what you do for event handling is for each button you will say add action listener. Then you will pass this means current object, meaning the my calculator, and it's action listener. In action listener you have override action perform. So what happens is when you pass this automatically triggers this method. That is the theory in Java. So when you say this, it look at this, it figures action listener. So it knows for a button it want action perform. So it automatically links this because you have linked it to the current class and you have override it. That's how these things gets linked, to each other. So button click. Now instead of button click, if it's exit button, I want to exit. If it's clear button, I want to clear, right? So because of that I had to put some if conditions, right? So I had to put if conditions here and figure out which button is clicked. For that I will have to do a few things.